Hello there, welcome to my channel. My name is Kristen. Here I like to talk about social and cultural issues through the lens of pop culture and public figures, usually, but not always. Today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts about the Gabby Hanna, Jessie Smiles situation after the release of the 3-hour phone call and Gabby Hanna's statement about the phone call. I went back and watched Jessie Smiles' video about Gabby Hanna that was posted a few years ago, or maybe it was a year ago, like 2019, and then I watched Jessie's more recent video about Gabby Hanna. I also went and watched Gabby Hanna's video about Jessie and her statement on the phone call. So that is what I'm pulling from, as well as just other things I've seen Gabby say and do. My thought here is that it really seems like Gabby Hanna is currently and has been projecting for quite some time. And by projecting, I mean the defense mechanism in which a person will try to protect themselves from bad things by claiming that they're not true and that actually those things apply to somebody else. The Wikipedia definition reads, psychological projection is a defense mechanism in which the ego defends itself against unconscious impulses or qualities, both positive and negative, by denying their existence in themselves and attributing them to others. Projection is the only psychological term I'm going to be using today because I have no interest in diagnosing somebody or medicalizing bad behavior. I just believe that this behavior that I'm going to be talking about in this video really is projection. So that is the word I'm going to use. I also want to ask people in the comments to refrain from attempting to diagnose somebody or applying a diagnosis to a certain behavior. I don't want people to call Gabby insert personality disorder here. Please don't do that. So I have a list of 6 items I want to discuss in relation to my hypothesis that Gabby is projecting, and then I have a few other side thoughts that I want to add at the end. So let's start with the list of 6 projection-related items.
Item 1. Thinly veiled threats.
In the 3-hour phone call, Gabby accuses Jessie of threatening her with texts that say effectively, "I have no desire to make a video about you. This is not me saying I'm going to make a video," etc. From what I gathered reading the texts, Jessie was trying to assure Gabby that she would not be making a video, and she just wanted to talk to Gabby about it. It seems to be the exact opposite of a threat. But Gabby in the phone call claimed more than once that Jessie was threatening her and that this was a thinly veiled threat and that her lawyers agreed. And in her video addressing the phone call, also said that again. So here we understand that Gabby views saying things like, "I don't want to do X" is a threat to do X, right? So with that in mind, I just want to point out that multiple times in the 3-hour phone call with Jessie, Gabby said something to the effect of, "I don't want to take this to court and hurt your family. I know you have a child. I don't want to take food out of their mouths. I know your kid's in speech therapy. I know you need money. I don't want to have to sue you. I'm not trying to hurt you." She says all of these things saying that she doesn't want to hurt Jessie and she doesn't want to sue Jessie and she doesn't want to hurt Jessie's finances by suing her, bringing up Jessie's family. Gabby thinks that saying "I don't want to do this" is a threat, right? So Gabby did that multiple times in the phone call. Does that mean Gabby was trying to threaten Jessie? I think that's what that implies, right? So in my opinion, when Gabby accuses other people of threatening her when they literally say the opposite of a threat, that's because when Gabby does those things, she does mean it as a threat. So that's item 1.
Item 2. The inability to admit wrongdoing.
Item 2 I want to discuss is Gabby says that Jessie can't admit what Jessie has done wrong. But throughout that 3-hour phone call, whenever Jessie brought up something hurtful that Gabby did to her, Gabby would deflect and say, "Oh, well, you did this other thing," or, "Well, that was already public information," or insert excuse here to explain why what Gabby did was not wrong. Gabby claims that other people can't admit what they've done wrong because Gabby herself cannot admit when she's done wrong. That was item 2.
Item 3. You're ruining my career.
Item 3 that I think is kind of projection-y is when Gabby accused Jessie of trying to ruin her career by making Jessie's first video about Gabby, in which Jessie read through the texts that Gabby sent, or DMs that Gabby sent to a fan. In these DMs, Gabby talks a lot about Jessie, sends screenshots of Jessie's messages to the fan, talks about Jessie's medication, and talks about Jessie's refers to it all as R drama, drama. Gabby's whole point is Jessie, by reading the things that Gabby said, was trying to ruin Gabby's career. Here, I think Gabby is projecting because Gabby knows that Gabby said those things, and if those words are ruining Gabby's career, it's because Gabby said them, not because Jessie reread them. But Gabby cannot accept responsibility, so Gabby is projecting it back onto Jessie and saying, it's Jessie's fault. It's Jessie's fault that Jessie told people what I, Gabby, said. That doesn't make sense. So that was item 3.
Item 4, twisting the narrative.
Item 4. Gabby accuses Jessie of twisting the narrative in the phone call with Jessie, as well as in other statements that she's made about Jessie, when Gabby herself is somebody who twists the narrative quite frequently. I have 2 examples. The first example is from the call when she and Jessie were arguing about how many times had Jessie mentioned Gabby in videos. And Gabby said, you've talked about me 7 times over the last 6 years. And Jessie says, okay, yeah, sure. I probably shouldn't have mentioned you. I probably said some subtle digs about you, and those were catty of me. Later in that conversation, Gabby changes Jessie mentioned me and said a thing about me 7 times to Jessie made 7 videos about me. And that's an entirely different accusation. She's twisting the narrative over the course of the conversation so that it's more in Gabby's favor to make Jessie look as bad as possible. The second example I have of Gabby twisting the narrative during that phone conversation is Gabby over and over insisted that she did not try to sleep with Jessie's ex-boyfriend. She never tried to do that. Then later says, okay, I did it so that I could know that I could, and I suggested that we sleep together. And then immediately goes back to saying, I never tried to sleep with him. Did you not ask him to sleep with you? Because that's trying to sleep with somebody. So those are 2 examples of her twisting the narrative.
Item 5, displays of emotion as manipulation.
The 5th thing that I find to seem like projection is in Gabby's video about the phone call. Gabby says that Jessie was looking for a place to get emotional so that Jessie could manipulate the audience with the footage and audio, which is frankly kind of a vile thing to say, considering Jessie was upset about things related to her art. In my opinion, the only reason to accuse Jessie of trying to get emotional in order to have that as a manipulation tactic for later is if Gabby herself does things like that. On the call, there was one point where I noticed Gabby's voice got much higher than it had been throughout the call at other points where she was upset, and it was more shrill, and she seemed really upset. In context of Gabby accusing Jessie of getting emotional in order to use that as a manipulation tactic, it makes me wonder if this one moment of heightened emotion was Gabby herself doing that. I don't know. I'm not saying it was. That is just a question that came to my mind after she accused Jessie of doing that. So that was the 5th item related to projection.
Item 6, blackmail.
The 6th item that I have related to Gabby projecting is when Gabby accused Jessie of blackmailing her and threatening her. Gabby was literally blackmailing Jessie on the phone call, allegedly, in my opinion. She told Jessie more than once that if Jessie did not do what Gabby wanted, Gabby was going to continue talking about her R and possibly sue Jessie and refuse to let any of this go. That, by Gabby's own definition, is blackmail. Gabby did that to Jessie. Now Gabby's accusing Jessie of doing that to her when we saw Gabby do it to Jessie. Gabby said that she's been living in fear of Jessie deciding to release something about Gabby to try to ruin her life again. And I think the reason that Gabby lives in fear of that is because Gabby is always looking out for an opportunity to do that to Jessie. For example, in Jessie's recent video about Gabby, Jessie says that Gabby reached out to her ex-boyfriend to try to get him to agree to do an exposed video about Jessie. And when Jessie confronted Gabby about it, Gabby said, well, it was just a preemptive measure just in case. Because Gabby felt that she had to, just in case, be able to expose someone. Because Gabby is the one who's always looking for ways to out people and to hurt people. And she's accusing of Jessie of doing that to her, when it really seems like she's doing that to Jessie. So those are the reasons I feel like Gabby is projecting. I feel like she has accused Jessie of doing a lot of things that there is clear evidence that Gabby herself is doing. And I think that that's interesting. I have other thoughts that I wanted to share that didn't really relate to projection, but they did relate to just takeaways I got from listening to this phone call and watching those videos again. Gabby, this whole call, was mad at Jessie because Jessie's video, in Gabby's opinion, is the reason why people started calling Gabby an R apologist. Except Jessie never called Gabby an R apologist, and Jessie did not bring up any of Gabby's tweets from that day that frankly made her look like an R apologist. Jessie didn't do any of that. Gabby wants to blame Jessie for people finding tweets that Gabby herself posted and drawing conclusions based on those tweets that Gabby posted, when Jessie never referenced the tweets or agreed with the conclusion people drew. Somehow, it's Jessie's fault that Gabby said these horrible things and that people found out about it. That doesn't make any sense. The second thing I wanted to bring up is that multiple times in the call, Gabby brings up subtweets or vague statements and says, like, that was clearly about me. Sometimes Jessie says, yeah, that was about you and it was catty, but most of the time, Jessie's like, dude, that was not about you. That was about blah, blah, blah. And Gabby just straight up doesn't believe her. So in Gabby's video, when she talks about Jessie has been harassing her all of these years and won't stop talking about her, most of the things that Gabby is talking about were not statements Jessie made about Gabby. They were statements Jessie made about somebody that we don't know. The third thing I wanted to mention is in the 3-hour phone call, Gabby claims to have all of these receipts and proof of what happened. Every time Jessie asks Gabby to share the proof, to show her what happened, to show her the text or the voice note or whatever, Gabby changes the subject. At one point, after Jessie asked her to just send her proof, show her the thing that Gabby's talking about, Gabby said, I didn't want to do that to you and your family. I have no desire to take food out of your kid's mouth. Court is a very, very last-ditch effort. I don't want to go there. So instead of sending Jessie the proof that she's asking for, Gabby's like, well, I don't want to sue you. I don't want to hurt you. She's, again, doing one of those thinly veiled threats in response to being asked for any kind of evidence to support her claims. I think if Gabby had the proof, she would have shared it. Gabby has been putting all kinds of screenshots and proof in her videos that don't really support her. If she had better evidence, she would be using it. The most interesting thing in all of this is that Gabby seems to have no self-awareness of how she's coming across. Gabby confidently released this phone call that makes her look really horrible, thinking it was going to vindicate her. She's bringing up all these situations where she was objectively in the wrong, and she seems to truly believe that she is the one who was wronged. I don't understand. I think it's useful to talk about and look at because Gabby's not the only person who acts this way. I'm sure we all know somebody who is always the victim, who never wants to take ownership of what they did, and who, if you ever speak up for yourself, gets mad at you and accuses you of doing the things they've been doing to you. If this stuff is familiar, I encourage you to limit contact with those people because it's not good. And if you are someone who does this type of thing, I encourage you to reflect. It is possible to change your behavior. Not everybody is going to want to forgive you and keep you in their life, but you can change and you can build new friendships and new relationships, and you don't have to keep being this way. Gabby is a great example of how not to behave and how not to act, and I encourage you to take note. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I hope you have a really good day. Bye!